I pulled out the black card. I was just about to cover Bai Ningbing's tuition fees. That naive boy suddenly turned cold and arrogant. The bullet comments surged wildly before my eyes. The female lead had been reborn. She had returned to the very beginning. In this lifetime, he could finally make up for a lifetime of regret with Juoma. If it weren't for that jerk with a bit of dirty money in our past lives, who stood between the male and female leads? How could they have missed each other for an entire lifetime? When I looked up, I met Bai Ningbing's suddenly frosty gaze. He seemed to suspect I was merely deluded by a childhood crush. And for no reason, my eyes began to sting with tears. Oh no, the female lead really was reborn. Reborn into her penniless, 18-year-old self with nothing but the cold wind of the Northwest in her sleeves. She was standing a little too close to Ningbing. I could clearly feel the shift in her aura. It was the elegance nurtured by long-term wealth, something absolutely impossible for a poor girl to possess. He glanced disdainfully at the black card in my hand. With a voice sharp as a bullet comment, he said, "I told you I'd find a way to pay my own tuition. I don't need your money to insult my dignity." After saying that, he actually brushed past me and wrapped his arms tightly around Gu Baiken, whose face brimmed with hostility toward me. The strength of that embrace was like someone holding onto a long-lost treasure. Baiken, after everything we've been through, I've realized the person I love most in this life is you. All around us, the liars buzzed to life, and the bullet comments in front of my eyes scrolled faster than ever. So the female lead's first lesson after rebirth was to go after her childhood sweetheart. Exactly. No hesitation whatsoever. What a wicked supporting male. Serves him right to be dumbstruck now. In our past life, the female lead reluctantly accepted my black card for tuition and agreed to be with me, now reborn. No amount of money I offer means anything to her. I rubbed my eyes and looked at the subtitles appearing out of thin air. From them, I pieced together a truth. I was the Nambai they were talking about. The same guy that forced the female lead to be with me, the vicious son of a wealthy family. The Bai Ningbing before me had been reborn. In our past life, I had fallen for him at first sight just as we entered college. When I learned he couldn't afford tuition, I offered up my black card to cover all his expenses for 4 years and asked that we be together. Bai Ningbing had wrestled with it for a long time, but in the end, he took the card and agreed in humiliation and buried the childhood crush he had loved for years deep inside. She believed I had torn apart her relationship with Gu Baiken. She resented my domineering double eyelids, felt inferior and overly sensitive. Perhaps she always felt lesser in our love, with no sense of dignity. Yet she had grown used to the life of a rich woman and didn't want to lose her golden goose. In the second year after graduation, news came that Gu Baiken was getting married. All the love she had repressed for years burst forth. Bai Ningbing drove in a panic to her childhood sweetheart's wedding, wanting to pull off a wild wedding crash. But on the way, distracted, she crashed into a truck and died on the spot. Now reborn, the first thing she did was to pour out the love she had never dared express in her past life to her childhood sweetheart. As for the regrets of the last life, I'll accept them all for you. The bullet comments did align with my transactional nature. But just as they said, Bai Ningbing had taken so much of my money. After graduation, I even introduced her to connections to start her own business. So what if she was humble and accommodating toward me? So what if she obeyed my every word? Wasn't that how it was supposed to be? Did she really think she could use both coercion and charm to swallow up the entire Fang family fortune? I said coldly, and decisively tossed the black card to a passing girl. Bai Ningbing, who said I was going to pay your tuition? The one I wanted to give it to was him. Hey beautiful, would you like to be my girlfriend? What's going on? Did I miss something earlier? How did the black card end up with father? This girl Even if you took the black card, it wouldn't help you. Lanpixin only ever had feelings for the female lead. In this lifetime, he would never glance at anyone else. He was merely retreating to advance, but the female lead had no idea of this tactic. Bai Ningbing's body trembled slightly. He had just returned from rebirth, and in this new beginning, there was a layer of mystery and confusion in his eyes, as if he hadn't yet realized that this life story was not quite the same as the last, with subtle differences, but his beloved stood right before him. The fear of death and the joy of rebirth still clashed violently within him, leaving him little room to think clearly. I enthusiastically invited the beautiful girl to join me for a meal. The semester had just begun, and I was still unfamiliar with most of the faces around me. As for Bai Ningbing, I had only heard whispers from classmates saying he still hadn't scraped together enough for tuition, so I kindly pulled out my black card and asked if he would consider becoming my girlfriend. After all, his face was exactly my type. I, who held appearance in the highest regard, momentarily lost the ability to think. Perhaps I truly loved Bai Ningbing in our past life, but in this life, love hadn't even begun. Before it was already strangled in the cradle, I had more than enough money. I was the only son of the Fang family, the richest in the country, a young master who had never suffered any grievance. Why hang myself on a crooked tree? Love is love, no matter who I share it with. And this girl holding my black card, her face also aligned with my sense of beauty. I chose the most upscale restaurant near campus, frowned as I looked through the menu, then tossed it to the waiter. Bring out every one of your signature dishes. The waiter happily scurried off. The restaurant doors swung open, drawing everyone's attention. I turned to look. It was the reborn female lead, wrapped tightly around her beloved childhood sweetheart. In our past life, Bai Ningbing had indeed been well-nourished by wealth. His dining etiquette and bearing left nothing to be criticized. He carried himself like a true aristocratic heiress. Every now and then, he cast a glance in my direction, his eyes burning with uncontainable anger and frustration. He seemed convinced that my presence here was just a ploy to strike up conversation. He couldn't seem to shake me off, and he clearly believed that dining with another girl was just a scheme to make him jealous. Bai Ningbing sat with his back perfectly straight, casually ordered 7 or 8 signature dishes from the menu, then looked at Gu Baiken with deep affection. The food here is mediocre. Just make do for now. When we have time, I'll take you to try the finest imported cuisine, and then to a luxury store to pick out some of the latest seasonal styles. Gu Baiken was so stunned by the sudden blessing that hit him. He nearly fainted from happiness. He shot me a triumphant look and raised his voice. Sister Bai, today marks the first day of our relationship. I have a gift I've been preparing for a long time that I want to give you. His face glowed with pride. The bullet comment said, Gu Baiken and Bai Ningbing had been childhood sweethearts all along. They'd only waited to both get into college before confessing their feelings in the most natural way. When I took out the black card, Gu Baiken's teeth clenched with hatred, nearly to the point of cracking. The way he looked at me was exactly like someone watching a third party steal away their love. But when Bai Ningbing agreed to be my girlfriend in our past life, he never once mentioned Gu Baiken's existence. Right, Gu Baiken secretly pulled out a shabby little box. Bai Ningbing's face lit up with excitement, and the bullet comments went wild, screaming, "Oh my god!" The male and female lead's first reunion after rebirth was so sweet. It was all happening too fast. So fast I couldn't keep up with their pace. What do you all think is inside that box? If I remember right, the gift Fang Yuan once gave the female lead was a piece of jewelry worth over $1 million. Right now, the male lead may not be as rich as the wicked supporting male, but the gift had clearly been prepared with care. He held the box in his palm. There was barely any weight to it. Bai Ningbing opened it with eager anticipation. Inside lay a small jar filled with hand-folded paper stars. Gu Baiken blinked proudly. Sister Bai, I folded these over summer vacation just for you. I was saving them for the day we both got into the same university, so I could confess and give them to you. Every little note inside has the words I love you written on it. So, what do you think? Do you like it? Just moments ago, the bullet comments had been buzzing like a crowd. If I didn't know Bai Ningbing had been reborn, I might have believed she really liked the gift too. Perhaps. To the 18-year-old Bai Ningbing, this little paper star was a rare and heartfelt token. Naive yet beautiful. But beneath that youthful appearance lived the soul of a 24-year-old who had lived before. And that 24-year-old had long grown used to exquisite cuisine, to luxury watches, cars, and branded goods that came easily. It was all too familiar to Zhang Jiqing by now. And just a few hours ago, the Bai Ningbing who died in that car crash had been driving the Porsche Cayenne from my garage. The feel of the soft leather steering wheel was worlds apart from the rough wood of this handmade box. I let out a soft chuckle and pulled out a watch from my bag. I had picked it up earlier today, while casually passing by a luxury watch store. Since the girl in front of me, Zhongwen, had become my girlfriend, I couldn't show favoritism. So I slid the exquisite watch toward her. 1-1, today is our first day together as well. This is my gift to you. Take a look, do you like it? Wait a second. Wasn't that the same watch I gave the female lead in my past life? How could I be giving it to someone else now? That male supporting lead must still be trying to advance by retreating, hoping to get the female lead's attention. Trust me, he won't be able to keep it up for long. Right now, Non-Pei's entire strategy was unraveling from within. The watch gleamed brilliantly. Zhongwen was still recovering from the shock of the black card. When the second wave hit, her hand hesitated as it reached for the dial, only to be met with Bai Ningbing's furious shout, "Don't touch that. That's clearly mine." The rest of his sentence got stuck in his throat. I knew exactly what he had wanted to say, that the watch was his. The bullet comments reminded us that in the past life, he had worn that watch for 6 years. He had adored it. Every night before sleeping, he'd take it off, wipe it gently, and place it back into its box. But this life was not like the last. Now he had his cherished childhood sweetheart by his side. Surely, he no longer cared for such material things. Gu Baiken shot me a glare, his face darkening. So what if you have money? You reek of that disgusting stench of wealth. A thoughtless watch can't possibly compare to the love I poured into my gift. Right, Sister Bai. Bai Ningbing finally snapped out of it, forcing out a strained smile. Baiken is right. She pulled herself together and was just about to serve a dish to her beloved childhood friend when her phone suddenly rang. It was a knockoff phone with poor audio, but even from a short distance, I heard it clearly. A cold female voice came through the speaker. "Miss Bai, your mother's medical bill at the hospital is due again." Bai Ningbing's face changed instantly. The bullet comments immediately exploded in panic. They almost forgot the male lead's mother was critically ill in the hospital and desperately needed money to survive. I remembered clearly in the past life, the male supporting lead had just tossed $1 million into the hospital and the surgery had gone smoothly. God, no way! The leads just had their first sweet moment together. Barely even a taste of romance. And now the male supporting lead might try to use the female lead's mother's illness again as an excuse to lure her into being with him. Why does the male supporting lead always linger like a ghost? Damn, he's looking her way again. He's definitely thinking this is his chance to strike up a conversation. I recalled what a few classmates had told me before I pulled out the black card. That Bai Ningbing's mother had been battling cancer for years and was still in desperate need of funds for treatment. All the savings at home had been drained completely, and we were drowning in debt. I quickly turned back to Zhongwan. "No one in your family is sick, right?" No one is. Bai Ningbing clenched his jaw and got up to head for the hospital, only to be stopped by the waiter. "Miss, you haven't paid the bill yet." A round of laughter rippled through the room. In our past life, he had the backing of the Fang family. No matter which high-end restaurant he went to, the owners would greet him with wide smiles, welcoming him in like royalty and assuring him not to worry about the bill. He could settle everything after a few visits. But this rebirth had been too brief. He clearly hadn't shaken off his old habits. The waiter presented a bill for 1,280 yuan. That amount couldn't even cover half a bottle of the wine the female lead used to drink in her past life. Bai Ningbing naturally reached for the black card, but his hand came up empty, and beads of cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Though he had returned to being 18, he was young, naive, and now broke. He didn't have a single penny to his name, not even 80, let alone 1,280. The waiter maintained a professional smile. Bai Ningbing gritted his teeth and turned to Gu Baiken, hesitating as he spoke. "Baiken, can you cover this meal first? I'll transfer you the money later." Gu Baiken grew wary. "Sister Bai, I only get 1,500 yuan a month for living expenses. This one meal already cost 1,200. How am I supposed to survive the rest of the month?" "Don't worry, I have a way to make money." "What way could you possibly have to make money? Besides, weren't you the one who said you'd treat us? Why are you asking me to pay now?" Gu Baiken mumbled under his breath, clearly unwilling to foot the bill. The youthful couple who had just confessed their feelings less than an hour ago now faced their first romantic obstacle. I took out my black card and called the waiter over. Bai Ningbing turned away with obvious disdain, as if I might cling to him the very next second. Cling desperately and shamelessly, now that he had been reborn. He wanted nothing to do with someone like me. And the sting of public humiliation still lingered vividly in my memory. His tone was laced with deep disgust. "Fang Yuan, how many times do I have to say it? Can you please stay away from me? I really can't stand your obsession, and I'm even more sick of you coming between me and Baiken. Neither my mother nor I need your filthy money." I was astonished by Bai Ningbing's shamelessness. Even if what the bullet comment said was true, that in the past life I had been hopelessly in love with him. In this life, we had never been together. But ever since he reappeared, even back when he couldn't afford his tuition, all I had done was take out my black card. Not once had I ever asked him to be my boyfriend, and yet he rushed to confess to his childhood sweetheart first. Before that moment, we hadn't even had any interaction. He was the one who hated the person I had been in our last life, but he was also the one still trapped in that past. I let out a cold laugh. All I did was call the waiter over to pay the bill. "Classmate Bai, are you perhaps misunderstanding something? Why do you keep insisting that I'm chasing after you?" Bai Ningbing's face turned pale, and only then did it seem to dawn on him that in this life, we were now nothing more than strangers. The 6 years of entanglement from our past had not yet begun. Realizing that, he stumbled back a step. The bullet comments flared up in confusion. "What's going on? Why isn't Nanpei paying for Bai's mother's treatment?" "Exactly, Bai's mother has cancer. If Nanpei doesn't come up with the money, how can the female lead possibly gather that astronomical sum? Bai's mother was the only one who gave her comfort during those 6 long years of misery." Reading those lines as they scrolled past, my face darkened. They called the 6 years I spent showering Bai Ningbing with money a miserable life. To her, they were years of humiliating shame. In my past life, after I used my money to save Bai Ningbing's mother, what I got in return was his secret scheming with Bai Ningbing. "Zhao Bing, how can I let a woman walk all over him like that? Listen to your mother. You have to keep all the money in your own hands. Only when a man fears losing you will he truly stay in line. My daughter is so outstanding. She even got into a top university. There are tons of boys for her to choose from. The Fang family only has one son, and all that money doesn't it eventually become ours, the Bai families? Bai Ningbing swallowed his pride and nodded, but the vast wealth of the Fang family could never belong to an outsider like him. What he could get was merely the bit that slipped through the cracks of my fingers. When he behaved, I let a little trickle through. If he didn't, then he got nothing at all. How could a young master from a powerful family like me be foolish enough to hand over our family fortune so easily? When it came to everything the Fang family had, Bai Ningbing was filled with envy and longing, but utterly powerless. Zhongwen couldn't hold back anymore. Classmate Bai, it's been you chasing Fang Yuan all along. Haven't you noticed? He's never once responded to you, yet you always act like some pitiful abandoned lover. It's honestly laughable. Bai Ningbing's face darkened. His voice turned impatient. And you, a bumpkin from Xinjiang, do you even deserve to speak to me like that? Do you have any idea who I am? His voice dropped low, sounding exactly like some pampered heiress, polished by years of luxury. After he started the company in our past life, countless people flattered him, calling him young Master Bai. They said it so often, he began to believe it himself. But Bai Ningbing hadn't realized yet that the clothes he was wearing right now were even cheaper than mine. I clapped my hands and raised an eyebrow. Classmate Bai is absolutely right. Zhongwen looked at me with a hurt expression. I glanced him up and down. His clothes were plain and cheap. Didn't he look exactly like a country bumpkin? I frowned and waved dismissively, channeling the arrogance of a domineering CEO. Even if someone gave me such ragged clothes, I wouldn't wear them. Zhongwen, come with me to the mall right now. You're not leaving until you've spent at least 100,000 yuan. Carrying several shopping bags out of the mall, Zhongwen was still in shock. He stood frozen, completely dazed. I reached out and touched his long, draping hair. My girlfriend should only wear the finest things. All the money I gave Bai Ningbing. This lifetime, not a single cent more. The bullet comments were still talking about Bai Ningbing's situation. Right now, he was being tormented by money problems, tuition, living expenses, and his mother's medical bills. If money and Gu Baiken were his only regrets in the past, then after easing that regret in this life, he'd earned himself 20 more. On the way back to school, I scrolled through the bullet comments with amusement. Female lead, don't go back to the second male lead. You'll just end up tangled with him for years again. I'd much rather see you and the male lead in a sweet romance. Poor girl, she's still being forced back to non-Pei's side. Who could possibly tolerate non-Pei's temper? Sai, is there really no way to escape the toxic non-Pei even after rebirth? As the bullet comments kept rolling, sure enough, in front of the dormitory, I spotted Bai Ningbing's proud figure. He looked like he'd been waiting a long time. When he saw me, he gave a bitter smile, as if surrendering to fate. Fang Yuan, I've lost. I still can't escape your entanglement. How about this if you give me the black card and promise to your temper? I'll agree to be your girlfriend. As he said those words, his whole body radiated defeat, like he had made a monumental decision or a painful concession. Even his face was clouded with humiliation and shame. His dignity must be worth quite a lot, if he thought he could trade it for my limitless black card. I let out a laugh, unable to hold it back. I've never seen anyone so proud while begging for a meal. I couldn't help but remind him. Classmate Bai, do we even know each other? Bai Ningbing glared at me with burning intensity. No one knows you better than I do. Do you really think by retreating like this, I'll look at you with softer eyes? Enough already, just give me the black card. My mother's still in the hospital waiting for the money. He spoke with such certainty, completely convinced I would give in. In our previous life, I was with him for 6 years. If it hadn't been out of love, there's no way I would have held on that long. He had seen how madly in love I could be. And the one who's favored always thinks he can do whatever he wants. Bai Ningbing, The overdue hospital bills really couldn't wait any longer. A mess of debts was waiting for him to patch up with cash. Jongwon decisively stepped in front of me, cracking through Bai Ningbing's pride. Fang Yuan, when did he ever say he wanted you to be his girlfriend? That last sentence hit like a bolt from the blue, leaving Bai Ningbing stunned on the spot. He stood there in a daze for a long time. Suddenly, something seemed to dawn on him. The very first thing he did after coming back to life was confess to Gu Baiken. As for me, it's true I never actually said anything about wanting him as a girlfriend. All that entanglement in our past life hadn't even happened yet in this one. But soon Bai Ningbing gave a wry smile and slowly shook his head. 6 years of tangled love in our last life had cut to deep. Every memory, every moment. He simply couldn't believe I had never loved him. He sighed and couldn't hide the weariness in his voice. Alright, Fang Yuan, I admit my confession to Baiken upset you, but my mom's situation really can't be delayed any longer. Just give me the card, and I'll let go of everything in the past. Watching Bai Ningbing make such a defeated compromise, the bullet comments lit up in a panic. The heroine just got her life back. Why is she getting entangled with the second male lead again? Now begins 6 years of humiliation. But without the second male lead, she's just a poor student right now. Even if she wants to start a business, she has no startup funds. How is she supposed to raise money? I looked at Bai Ningbing, answering both him and the bullet comments. If you have no money, then figure it out yourself. If you can't give up your pride, don't you still have your body? It seemed I had hurt Bai Ningbing's pride. He didn't show up again at Liu's place for a whole month. Before leaving, he gritted his teeth. Fang Yuan, you never know when to rein in that temper of yours, and you'll never realize just how much people hate it. As punishment, you'd better cool off and think about it. For the next month, don't expect to see me again. His sudden withdrawal felt like an unexpected reward. It almost didn't feel real. Since we weren't in the same class, running into someone by chance became incredibly difficult. After Bai Ningbing vanished, I started spending more time with Jongwan. Every day he quietly waited for me downstairs from the dorm, hoping to walk to class with me. He even volunteered to fetch water and buy meals for me. But my roommate Luffy always chased him away fiercely. Young Master Fang, you to just focus on your romance. This kind of manual labor, leave it to us loyal servants. Luffy was always intense. That's why I usually called him Monkey. After he got into college, his family didn't give him a single cent. They expected him to hurry up and start working to buy a house and car for his younger brother. Stubborn Monkey carried his luggage in a snakeskin bag and walked the road to university all by himself. On the very first day, I asked him to help with fetching water and meals. 200 yuan per trip. He hugged me and cried for half an hour, then eagerly took over all those chores. By then, I had already cast Bai Ningbing out of my mind, but the bullet comments kept dragging him back in. Desperate to remind everyone he still existed, like how he was borrowing money left and right to plug the holes. But how much could the other students even lend? It was just a drop in the ocean, nowhere near enough to solve his problems. With not a penny to his name, he even had to rely on Gu Baiken just to eat, the lover he once regretted never being able to stay with. As we spent more time together, tensions quietly began to rise. In order to save money, Bai Ningbing, who had never worked a day in his life, actually went out and started doing part-time jobs. Just when I thought I'd never run into Bai Ningbing again, I happened to see him while eating with Jongwon in the school cafeteria. It was an unexpected encounter. Normally, I only came here on weekends, while Bai Ningbing was around from Monday to Friday. His weekend jobs were scattered all over the place. We were like two parallel lines destined never to cross. But this weekend, those lines unexpectedly converged. He should have been off campus today. Yet there he was, sitting in the cafeteria. There was something subtly different about his aura. when he had just returned to life. He carried the elegance born from being pampered by wealth. Every movement radiated an inexplicable confidence. Now all that remained was a face full of exhaustion and irritability. He looked thinner, and his brows were permanently furrowed. As I walked into the cafeteria with Jongwonan's hand in mine, I saw Gu Baiken excitedly carrying a tray of food, bounding up to Bai Ningbing like a child. "I got the best food in the cafeteria today. Try it," he said cheerfully, then carefully placed the tray in front of Bai Ningbing. It was a 7 yuan meal from the big communal pot, greasy and utterly tasteless. I could clearly see the disdain on his face. How could the female lead possibly eat such food? Right when had money ever been an issue for her? She used to dine on rare delicacies every meal, and now, after reincarnating, she had to eat this slob every day. Even the clothes she wore cost only a few dozen yuan. Yet they had once been the latest luxury fashion. But everything she had was brought to her by the second male lead. Without him, this would have been her real life all along. This life was simply a return to her true starting point. After that line was spoken, no one had anything more to say, but I remembered. Back in our past life, once Bai Ningbing and I started dating. We never ate at the school cafeteria again. Every meal was either a lavish feast outside, or fresh sashimi plated by the butler, and delivered straight to the school. As for clothes, we visited luxury boutiques every week, returning with a carload of designer items. He almost never wore the same outfit twice. He had adapted to that extravagant lifestyle all too quickly. Day after day, he became unbearably picky about food and fashion. Now forced to eat soggy spinach, of course it felt like chewing wax. And those cheap clothes clearly made his skin crawl. After hesitating for a long while, Bai Ningbing finally set down his chopsticks. Looking across the table at Gu Baiken, he hesitated before speaking. "Baiken, I need to ask you for a favor." "What kind of favor?" "I need to borrow 300,000 yuan. Gu Baiken choked on a piece of tofu, his voice rising instinctively. He shrieked, "What did you say? You're asking me for 300,000 yuan. You eat my food, my drink. You haven't even paid back the 1,280 yuan you borrowed for meals 2 weeks ago. And now you've got the nerve to ask for 300,000. Countless piercing stares zeroed in on Bai Ningbing. Even I was stunned speechless. That pampered life in our past must have completely spoiled him. He couldn't even hide his appetite for wealth now. But Gu Baiken's family was no better off than Bai Ningbing's. How was a student supposed to come up with 300,000 yuan? Gu Baiken kept shouting, "Do you have any idea? My parents don't even make 100,000 a year. How dare you ask me for money? You use my meal card every day, gorging on food, and you still have the nerve to complain it's not good enough. That it doesn't compare to air-freighted fresh seafood. Your face is cleaner than the dishes you dream of. What were you eating that sashimi in your dreams?" Bai Ningbing's face turned bright red. He couldn't hold back his resentment. "I ended up like this because of you. Back then, I never ate a meal worth less than 1,000 yuan. Each bottle of wine I drank was worth at least tens of thousands. Even the worst red wine was still luxury tier. Everyone who saw me respectfully called me Mr. Bai." Gu Baiken looked like he'd just heard the funniest joke of his life. "Bai Ningbing, do you think I just met you yesterday? You can't even afford your tuition. And yet you walk around dreaming you're some kind of glitch in the system, living the high life, eating like royalty. Have you lost your mind or fallen into depression?" A wave of shocked laughter rippled through the crowd. Only then did Bai Ningbing snap out of his fantasy of the lavish life he once lived. It had already been a month since his rebirth, and he had chosen a path completely different from his past. What the hell is this? I came here to watch the sweet romance between the leads. Why has it turned into a daily shouting match? Without money, there's no sweet love story for you to witness. Bai Ningbing irritably looked up toward the door, and suddenly spotted me. His spine straightened instantly, the furrow in his brow smoothed. and he forced on a confident smile. His eyes carried a glimmer of hope as they locked onto mine. I was admiring my newly bought watch. As I strolled past Bai Ningbing with a sense of ease, each rhinestone inlaid on it had cost 2,000 yuan. The luster wasn't perfect. Next time I should choose even more dazzling stones. I lazily swept my eyes over the cafeteria food and frowned in disdain, then turned to Zhang Wenan. Let's go eat outside the school. Zhang Wenan quickly nodded. I walked straight past Bai Ningbing, without sparing him a glance as I headed out. The confidence on Bai Ningbing's face crumbled completely. Perhaps out of desperation, he suddenly abandoned Gu Baikan and shouted after me, "Bang Yuan, why won't you even speak to me anymore?" But when he saw the Porsche Cayenne parked outside the cafeteria, his voice got stuck in his throat. The luxury car was ostentatiously parked along the only path to the cafeteria, right where everyone would see it. Many students cast envious glances and whispered amongst themselves. Some admired the car's extravagance, while others grumbled that I was the textbook ex-boyfriend type. Bai Ningbing let out a bitter laugh. So this was meant to be a surprise for me. But I don't like things so flashy. Don't ever do this again. I remembered clearly that in our past life, the female lead drove this car when she went to visit her childhood sweetheart and died in a car crash. That car had only been given to her after graduation back then. But in this life, the second male lead brought it out early. Our female lead will always belong to the male lead. How could she be swayed by a mere luxury car? Then came the glorious moment of poetic justice. Bai Ningbing was clearly in love with the car. In our past life, he had driven it countless times through the streets of Haiking, drawing the attention of everyone he passed. Naturally, he reached out to open the car door, only to be glared at by the butler in the driver's seat. This car was gifted to Miss Zhang by our young master. Why do random people always try to climb their way into it? Bai Ningbing's hand froze as if shocked by electricity. The aura of the long-vanished heiress seemed to gather around me once more. Uncle Wang, this car is clearly mine. Have you even forgotten that much? His voice dropped to a low murmur. In the past life, this car had indeed been his. But in this life, I let out a cold laugh, quickly opened the car door, and sat inside with Zhang Wenan, then slammed it shut with force. Bai Ningbing barely managed to yank back his hand in time, or he would have lost 4 fingers to that door. Through the window, I looked him over with unhidden disdain. Bai Ningbing, you really need to break your bad habit of claiming things that belong to others. This car is a gift I gave to my girlfriend. What does it have to do with you? In Bai Ningbing's eyes, I had always been an arrogant rich kid, so I naturally had to speak with unrelenting sharpness, leaving no room for courtesy. His fleeting joy was shattered into pieces. The light in his eyes dimmed as they fell on me. Wasn't this car supposed to be mine? I drove it for 2 whole years in our past life. His voice was barely audible, but I heard every word loud and clear. Even after all this time, he still couldn't let go of the past life. The very life he claimed to resent had become nothing more than an illusion in this one. A flower in a mirror, a moon reflected on water. Forever out of reach. Even the comment section was left speechless. What's going on here? Nanpei doesn't seem to love the female lead at all. The loneliness of a reborn heroine. I originally wanted to see a sweet romance between the leads, but damn, they confessed barely half a month ago, and they've already fought 15 times. Now, I just want to see the female lead slap back at the second male lead's obsession, but all I've seen is her getting slapped in return. You all keep saying that young Master Fang won't stop chasing after Bai Ningbing, but to me, it clearly looks like the female lead is the one chasing the second male lead. I glanced away from the comment stream. I am the eldest young master of the Fang family, born in Rome from the very start. How could I possibly chase after a woman who's utterly useless? Since Bai Ningbing felt that missing out on his childhood sweetheart in the last life without confessing was his greatest regret. Then in this life, let him fully make up for it. With a press of the pedal, the car surged forward. From a distance, I saw Sugu Baiken grabbing the female lead by her collar and shouting furiously, while Bai Ningbing just stared blankly at the tailpipe, letting the other to curse and tear at each other. I looked away and pulled out my Switch to play while grumbling at Uncle Wong. Driving into the school like this is too flashy. A few more times like this, and the school leadership is going to call me in for a talk. Uncle Wong quickly nodded. Alright, next time I'll wait outside the gate. Young master, since you don't have a girlfriend at the moment, how about considering the marriage alliance your grandfather suggested? With the Zhang family, maybe even an engagement. Sitting inside a private booth at the bar, I stared across at Zhang Wen. On the way here, I impatiently brushed off the idea. How could I marry someone from my hometown who's practically a stranger? Uncle Wong looked surprised. Not a stranger at all. You've been getting along with the Zhang family's eldest daughter for quite some time. When he said that, Zhang Wenan huddled in the back seat, curling up like a little quail. People in our social circle know that such matters are decided deals, not about love. They're just meant to bind to families in business, to better weather the risks. In my WeChat inbox lay a message from my father. Brat, seeing how well you get along with the Zhang family's young lady, I can finally stop worrying. If she's a good match, go ahead and get engaged. If not, drop her and move on to the next. Keep switching until you find one that suits you. At that moment, I really did feel like some rich punk, picking out a woman just to suit my taste. My life had become a hedonistic mess. Zhang Wenan, flustered, tried to explain. Xiao Yuan, I only heard you were looking to date someone from a poor background, so I dressed a little shabby, but I haven't done anything else. I had just found you in the crowd when you suddenly stuffed a black card into my hand and asked me to be your girlfriend. I didn't expect happiness to hit me so suddenly. He said he applied to the same university as me, just to confess the love he'd buried in his heart for years. But he hadn't expected that I'd be the one pampering him with wealth first. The process might have differed, but the outcome was just right. My tone turned cold. So you're saying you're this rich, and all our food, fun, and outings have been charged to my black card? He quickly explained, no, not at all. I haven't spent a single cent from that black card. You didn't even give me the password when you handed it to me. I didn't tell you the password. I awkwardly reached out to fingers and plucked the black card back. Then, feigning grace, I slipped it back into my bag. The comment section exploded, scrolling like mad. How did so much change in this life after rebirth? I remember there was also a marriage alliance in the past life, but didn't Fang Yuan use the excuse of having a girlfriend to reject the arrangement? Didn't the second male lead like the female lead? Who's really the blind one here? In this life, Fang Yuan has never once liked the female lead. The waiter pushed open the booth door with a tray of drinks, shattering the awkward tension of a whole lifetime. Our eyes met. The drinks came crashing down. He was stunned at first, then flew into a rage from shame. Fang Yuan, why are the two of you, a man and a woman alone, here together? Bai Ningbing appeared at the private booth door, wearing a wine-red vest. Just like the comment said, the part-time job he found was serving drinks and water to guests at the bar. Her face turned ashen. Her gaze darted between the two of us several times. Then she rushed forward and grabbed my wrist. Why are you alone with him? I shook off his grip. This is my fiancée. If I'm not with her, should I be with you instead? Both the Fang and Zhang families know we're already together. Everyone supports our union. Bai Ningbing was completely thrown off by the word fiancé. The dim booth couldn't hide the pale look on her face. Only after putting the mask back on did she seem to lose all strength. She let out a bitter laugh. Bai Ningbing, I know you're with her just to get back at me. Even with a second chance, I was always meant to be entangled with you." He turned his face away, as if it pained him to say it. "You really win. I agreed to be your girlfriend." "Hold on," I cut him off. "Did I ever ask you anything? And yet you shamelessly agreed anyway." Bai Ningbing closed his eyes, like he was making a huge decision, veins bulging. "Did you know? I've come back from a previous life. You were the one who handed me the black card and asked me to be your girlfriend. You even gave my mother 1,000,000 yuan for her treatment. Even that Porsche Cayenne was a gift from you. We were together for 6 years. You had a fiery temper, but I kept compromising for you. Even though I spent my last life longing for Gubaiken, this time being reborn helped me see my true feelings. I still love you." Bai Ningbing might not have realized there was an unconscious nostalgia in her tone. This relationship of the female lead really paid off big time. Who knew dating could come with so many benefits? "Young master, why don't you take a look at me instead? Don't be so hung up on gender." All in all, the female lead was spoiled and pampered, only to realize she missed the second male lead from her past life. Suddenly discovering that he did show genuine affection. In the previous life, when they dated, he only gave money when she behaved, never once offering up the family fortune blindly. In this life, when the female lead confessed to someone else, the second male lead let go instantly and never looked back. That final line made everything clear to me. So it turns out it was the money that Bai Ningbing couldn't let go of. Because I didn't hand over the entire Fang family fortune. In his mind, I was supposed to be gentle and obedient, offer up the Fang family's entire wealth with both hands, and become the kind of scoundrel who lives just to support him. But I'm merely arrogant and willful, not brainless. Even those of equal standing wouldn't dare covet my wealth. Yet Bai Ningbing treated it as if it were already in his pocket. And once he couldn't have it, he grew to resent it deeply. I haven't even started thinking about my father's fortune. So who is he to dream of claiming it? The atmosphere in the booth turned tense. Zhang Wenan stood up and interjected. "I know the standard male-led setup involves gambling, a seriously ill mother, a schoolgirl sister, and a shattered past. But I didn't expect we'd be diving into mysticism too." With snot running, he turned his head toward me, looking wronged and pitiful. "Xiao Yuan, my background isn't that tragic. My parents are alive and well. My sister is studying abroad perfectly fine, and I'm not reborn. No chosen one buffs or advantages. Do you think I still have a chance to rise? There's still a chance." I patted his shoulder seriously and told him that. In the end, Bai Ningbing was dragged away by several security guards. Even as he left, he kept yelling, "Fang Yuan, you love most is clearly me. You shouldn't look for anyone else. We really were together in our past life." Once our engagement was confirmed, both families immediately held an engagement banquet for us. My father arranged for me to study abroad, to further my education in finance. Before we parted, he held my hand, reluctant to let go. Since I was now engaged, the old man said, I couldn't just pick some random university to waste time anymore. He insisted I properly study finance, because the Fang family business would eventually depend on me. I tried to probe him carefully. The lion looked like he wanted to speak. Then father just said to give me a modest amount of gold as a goal. I told him to get lost, jokingly, of course. I hadn't even started thinking about inheriting his wealth yet. Yet even some low-level militia thought they could sell fat-burning supplements. The day I left, Li Effie, I cried like his soul was leaving his body. "Young master, how will I live if you're gone?" he wailed. He said he had planned to serve me and the young lady all the way until graduation. He sobbed that he had paid my tuition for me, and even left some living expenses behind. He begged me not to go out dressed in rags anymore and embarrass him. "Young master, I truly can't bear to part with you," he said. I laughed and promised I'd definitely pay him back before graduation. I told him I'd think of him every day, and laughed, telling him not to cry anymore. But his laughter was just too sharp and grating. The day I boarded the plane with my luggage, the long silent livestream comments started flooding in again. Everyone said Bai Ningbing was desperately searching for Fang Yuan. Is he looking for the male lead? Someone asked. No, he's looking for his money tree, came the reply. Look, someone pointed out. He even remembers Fang Yuan's old phone number from his past life. Should we call him? Another suggested. I looked down at my phone, about to go abroad. Of course, I needed to change my number from the past. Bai Ningbing's restless hands had been loitering around the dormitory for days. Right now, there were holes everywhere that needed money to fill. Even the hospital bills couldn't be delayed any longer. After thinking for a long time, he came up with an idea. He could take the initiative to borrow money from Fang Yuan. That way, things would unfold naturally. Fang Yuan would definitely use this as an opportunity to ask them to start dating. After all, in his past life, when she learned he didn't have money for tuition, Fang Yuan had generously pulled out a black card, and smiling brightly, she asked Bai, I can cover your tuition and living expenses, but you have to agree to be my boyfriend, okay? Bai Ningbing clenched his fists tightly. If Fang Yuan made the same offer this time, he would definitely agree without hesitation. But after waiting for several days, he never saw Fang Yuan appear, until an impatiently I told him bluntly, Stop waiting! Fang Yuan left for overseas studies the day after her engagement to Zhongwan. She's not coming back. Not ever again. Fang Yuan's engagement hit Bai Ningbing hard. In his past life, Liu Zhu never got engaged, and talk of going abroad was completely false. They had been together for 6 whole years, braved harsh winters, and grown out of their youthful naivety. He had only just confessed to Gu Baikin on the first day of his rebirth. In this life and the last, how could things have changed so drastically? Bai Ningbing trembled as he pulled out his phone and entered a phone number etched into his memory. The moment the call connected, a mechanical female voice shattered his thoughts with a cold apology. The number you dialed is not in service. Bai Ningbing stood frozen in place. Fang Yuan's number was no longer valid. He double-checked the digits. There was no mistake. It was a number burned into his mind for 6 years. But in this life, it had become a void. Bai Ningbing stood there stunned for a long time. So long that behind him, Gu Baikin gave him a hard shove. Pay up, Bai Ningbing, he snapped. You still owe me 1,280 yuan for meals, and you haven't returned a single cent yet. The boyhood friend before me was sharp-tongued and bitter. Nothing like the gentle version from my past life. I rubbed my temples wearily. If the day I returned to life, I still held hope for my childhood friend. Then, after a month of brutal reality, the only person left in my heart was Fang Yuan. Now all I had left was just over 1,000 yuan, earned from working part-time at a bar. And it wasn't even enough to cover the hospital bills. Just as Bai Ningbing was about to say, give me a few more days, a woman suddenly yanked him by the hair. Damn it, pay back the money you owe my boyfriend, she yelled. Bai Ningbing's head buzzed. Again from the pain, Fang Yuan said he already had a fiancée. I couldn't believe even Gu Baikin had already started seeing someone else. It felt like the world had suddenly hit fast forward. Everything was moving at a pace too fast to comprehend. He gave the woman in front of him a fleeting glance, and miraculously, I realized this was the very same woman from the wedding photo Gu Baikin had once shared in our past life. The one he proudly posted in the group chat. They were one and the same. In this life, because he couldn't afford tuition and went out to work early, he ended up meeting her for years ahead of schedule. Twists and turns led us here. My rebirth had caused both Fang Yuan and Gu Baikin to meet their lovers ahead of time. I numbly pulled out the last bit of cash on me. Only then did Gu Baikin sneer coldly and walk away with her on his arm. My phone rang suddenly. I scrambled to pull it out, my heart racing. But the number on the screen wasn't Fang Yuan's. Still, I answered as I walked past. An elderly woman's voice came through, "Little Bing. The hospital's demanding payment for your mother's medical bills. You'd better think of something fast." Frustration surged in my chest, clawing at my already crumbling heart. All the chaos since my rebirth was beginning to drown me. I snapped at the phone in a fit of rage. "You don't have any money and expect me to fix everything. Other parents lift their children up. Why do you always chase after me begging for cash? Look at Fang Yuan. His parents give him hundreds of thousands a month just for pocket money." From the other end, all I heard was muffled sobbing and her endless nagging. I really have the worst fate. Raised such an ungrateful daughter. Hasn't even visited the hospital for over a month. And not a single penny for my care. I hung up without a word, then scanned a code to rent a shared bike. All the way there, I kept trying to reassure myself. Fang Yuan still cared about him deep down. There's no way he'd just get engaged and leave the country without a word. Maybe he was just mad that I confessed to Gu Baiken and decided to hide. If I could just find him, give him an excuse to come down from his pride, say a few soft words, then this life might still follow the same path as before. We would still end up together. And once I became Fang Yuan's girlfriend, I'd never have to worry about money again. I knew exactly where Fang Yuan's mansion was. It was etched into my memory. I had lived there for 2 years in my past life. Every flower and tree there was as familiar as the back of my hand. But this time, the housekeeper stopped me at the gate with a wary look. "This is a private residence. You can't just walk in here." Panic rising, I blurted out a jumble of past and present. "I'm Fang Yuan's girlfriend. I lived here for 2 years. Don't you remember me?" The housekeeper looked me up and down and let out a scornful laugh, "Aiming high without knowing your place. Our young master just got engaged to Miss Zhang. They left the country together right after. Girlfriend, where do you think one of those fits in? Engaged and gone abroad." A chill ran through my whole body. Fang Yuan really left without saying goodbye. He didn't love him anymore. Suddenly my phone rang again. I fumbled to answer, hope flaring up once more. It was a number I didn't recognize. My eyes lit up with anticipation. My hand trembled as I picked up, only for my body to slowly collapse to the ground in despair. A cold, robotic female voice came through. "Miss Bai, your mother's medication has been halted. Please make the overdue payment immediately." My days studying abroad flew by in a blur. To Fang Yuan, I was just a minor blip in the grand scheme of life. He made a big entrance, and then vanished without a sound. But I knew more than enough about him over the years. Danmu always updated me on his latest news, trying to remind me of his existence in my colorful life. The childhood sweetheart I once longed for so desperately was someone I had completely broken things off with. And yet, after all the twists and turns, he somehow still found his way back to the love from our past life. The two of them dove into their romance with blazing intensity. Meanwhile, his mother passed away soon after, unable to gather enough money for her treatment. Even on her deathbed, she was still screaming in the hospital that she had raised a thankless daughter. And in the end, only Bai Ningbing remained, once pampered and delicate, and touched by even spring water. I became a model worker juggling 3 jobs with every ounce of strength I had. Even so, I still found myself constantly short on money. The crushing weight of debt made it hard for me to breathe. In my 2nd year of college, I made the decision to drop out. Thus began a long and exhausting search for stability. I worked odd jobs tirelessly. All the while, I never stopped asking around about her afternoons. But unfortunately, we were separated by thousands of miles. The cost of traveling such a distance was more than a year's living expenses. It wasn't something I could save up for with part-time work. Not until 4 years later, when I completed my studies. On the very first day I returned to the country from abroad, I headed straight for the long-missed Haikang. That was when I got a call from Li Fei saying, "Young master, the school is organizing a class reunion. Would you like to come?" Li Fei had shed the sallow, withered look of the past and turned into a capable, polished professional. He was gaining experience at one of the domestic branches under my name. He rushed up and hugged me with exaggerated enthusiasm. Overflowing with emotion, he said, "Young master, I haven't seen you in so many years. Do you have any idea how much I missed you? Young master, why are you frowning? If something's bothering you, just say it. This old servant will help carry your burden." I rubbed my temple with a sigh. The company has some operations overseas, but right now I can't find the right person, someone who can be stationed abroad long-term. Li Fei perked up immediately and eagerly volunteered himself. What a coincidence! I'm clearly the one destined for the role. That was when I remembered he once told me that his parents and his younger brother, upon learning he got into a big company, had been chasing him down every day, trying every means to get money out of him. To avoid them, Li Fei hadn't gone home in years. Looking at it that way, he truly was the chosen one for the job abroad. Once my biggest headache was resolved, I finally let out a deep breath. I hadn't interacted much with this group of classmates. The only familiar face in the entire class was Li Fei. Just before the reunion officially began, someone showed up late. I walked in, my presence commanding the room like a gust of wind. Bai Ningbing had arrived. Bai Ningbing and I were simply in the same field, not even proper classmates. His sudden entrance caught everyone off guard. Curious eyes all turned toward him. I could barely recognize him. He now looked to be around the same age as when he died in the car accident in our past life. I remembered the comments saying that in his past life, he lived with a sense of humor and never worked a single day in his life. Every move he made exuded elegant nobility. It was hard to reconcile that image with the exhausted man standing before us now. The long dormant comments began scrolling again. I almost didn't recognize the female lead. Isn't that the female lead from upstairs? This is the supporting character. No, not even that. Just a random background extra. Can't you tell Bai Ningbing is really broke? It's been almost 6 years since the reincarnation. He's failed at starting a business countless times, always going on about how he used to be from the Bai family. He's been fired over and over again. How could he not be poor? And yet he still fusses over food and drink, constantly underestimating himself, claiming he used to dine on rare delicacies. I couldn't even imagine how poor he must be now. Maybe he's just stuck in a cramped 100 square meter apartment, eating the same bland for dishes and one soup every day, then standing on the balcony with a worried face, gazing down at the sparkling river view. Come to think of it, that does sound pretty pitiful. Bai Ningbing had clearly put effort into his appearance, but the deep frown lines between his brows gave away his constant anxiety. He barely dared to lift his head to look at me, but he still mustered up the courage to step forward and softly said, "Fang Yuan, I heard your class reunion was happening and that you'd be here too, so I wanted to come see you. Have you been doing well these past few years?" The reunion was full of people I didn't know well. I got up and politely said goodbye to everyone, then walked past Bai Ningbing and left. He refused to give up and chased after me. It was raining heavily outside the hotel. I stood at the roadside with an umbrella, while Bai Ningbing stood soaked in the rain, looking utterly miserable. He opened and closed his mouth a few times before finally speaking. Even though he already knew the answer, he still held onto a sliver of hope. He cautiously asked me, "Fang Yuan, do you still love me?" I turned my head. Smiling distantly, I said, "Miss Bai, perhaps you should think it over carefully. It seems we never truly knew each other. So what is there to talk about, love or not? Just as you wished. In this life, you never took that first black card, and I never had any connection with you. We have always been strangers from beginning to end." After I gave my answer under the bridge of magpies, a few lines of bullet comments appeared on the horizon. but they grew fainter and fainter, a sign they were about to disappear for good. Truthfully, I was never someone who believed in love. Even in my past life, I was never foolish enough to offer my heart. Do you think I can imagine what kind of life Bai Ningbing is living now? Of course I can. That was close. He almost lived off someone else, living a life of mooching disguised as love. After being reborn, Bai Ningbing finally lived the life he was always meant to have. The bullet comments vanished completely. In front of me, Bai Ningbing visibly sank into despair. He clutched his head, overwhelmed with pain. It was my fault. From the moment I was reborn, before you had even spoken a word to me, I had already severed the thread of fate between us. Xiaoyuan, I called you that for 6 whole years. How did it all come to this? How could I lose the most important person in my life? Xiaoyuan, do you know? I always wanted to go abroad to find you, but I worked myself to the bone for years and still couldn't afford a round-trip ticket overseas. Yet the cost of staying abroad for half a year was no more than a bottle of wine in our past life. Why did money become so cruel? His face was streaked. I couldn't tell if it was rain or tears. A pair of headlights flashed toward us. A Porsche Cayenne pulled up beside me. The car door opened. Jongwon stepped out with an umbrella. After taking the bag from my hand, she glanced behind me and said in surprise, Xiaoyu, isn't that the reborn tragic version of him? The one trying to climb the ladder again, now performing another rainy day sob story. He lowered his eyes. Xiaoyuan, I don't have a broken family or divine help, but I can still use a sob story. Let me improvise one right here. In our past life, when Bai Ningbing returned reborn, he couldn't wait to reject the black card, and that led to the wonderful bond between Zhang, Wen, and me. I chuckled and threw a playful punch. No need for sob stories to make it in life. Bai Ningbing, 30,000. He found out about my marriage from the news. When he heard it, he was curled up in a shabby rented attic, mindlessly scrolling through his phone, surrounded by piles of takeout boxes and drink bottles. All of it cheap junk food he once looked down on, now his only source of nourishment. His daily meals reduced to this just to stay alive. My smiling face lit up the screen, appearing right in front of him. Still the heir of the Fang family. Every gesture and movement, radiating effortless grace and nobility. The news stated it clearly. I was about to marry the eldest daughter of the Zhang family. The second joint project between our families was also soon to launch. He stared blankly at my smiling face. The gap between us was simply too vast. A luxury item I bought on a whim was worth more than 10 years of his hard work. On the streets of Haikang, the chances of us meeting again were nearly zero. The most devastating part was, if he wanted to know about me, he could only rely on news reports now. Over the years, it wasn't that he didn't try to start a business. He sought out a few partners who'd succeeded in our past life. Those former collaborators all flatly refused him. Only one of them, after hearing him swear he could make money, impatiently pointed him to a woman, saying this kind of deal, anyone could profit from it. So who do you think is truly fit to do it? I suddenly understood everything. My smooth entrepreneurial path in the previous life was not because I was clever, nor because I was some kind of business genius. It was because I had Fang Yuan behind me. It was Fang Yuan who paved the way for me from the shadows. Back then, how did I act? I was always covered in spikes, ready to defend myself, trying to hide my deep-rooted insecurity. During those years when I tolerated his temper, wasn't he also always careful not to hurt my pride? He did everything he could to protect my dignity. I took one last look at the news of Fang Yuan's wedding, and a wild idea took root in my mind. I was going to stop his wedding. That thought made my blood boil with excitement. Maybe he would suddenly remember me. Maybe he would fall in love with me all over again. Maybe we could return to the love we once had in our past life. The car sped through the streets. It was a second-hand vehicle I had bought through sheer scrimping and saving. Just over 30,000 yuan. It drained every bit of savings I'd accumulated in a year. It was nowhere near as comfortable as the Porsche Cayenne from my past life. That Porsche Cayenne flashed through my mind, and a chill struck deep in my chest. Today's situation seemed to overlap with a memory from my past life. Back then, I was standing on the balcony of the Fang family villa, and through a classmates group chat, I learned that Gu Baiken was getting married. Just like now, I had been reckless and driven by impulse. The Porsche Cayenne sped along the road. The accelerator was pressed to the floor. My mind was filled with only one thought: to stop Gu Baiken's wedding. Instinctively, I glanced at the time. March 18th, that was Gu Baiken's wedding date in my previous life. And it was Fang Yuan's wedding date in this life. In an instant, my whole body turned cold. Being a moment of distraction. Just a few seconds. The car veered off course and slammed into the guardrail. In the final moment before losing consciousness, a strange sense of comfort curved my lips into a smile. If I could be reborn again at 18, the moment I opened my eyes, I would tear off the black card without hesitation. And when Fang Yuan asked if I wanted to be his girlfriend, I would hold him tight, then loudly declare to him, "I do." When I woke again, all I saw was a blindingly white ceiling and the pungent smell of disinfectant. I struggled to sit up. Fang Yuan wasn't there, nor was the school. Grabbing the sleeve of a nearby white coat, I urgently asked the doctor, "Did I reincarnate? What day is it today?" The doctor gave me a complicated look, then turned to the nurse behind him and said, "Do another CT scan on him." He hit his head on the steering wheel. There might be a blood clot pressing on the brain, which could be causing confusion. My face was reflected on the smooth surface of the machine. Young, yet worn and exhausted. It was me with nothing to my name. I picked up the shattered phone beside me in despair. News of Fang Yuan's wedding had gone viral across the internet. Everyone was in awe. It was a grand and extravagant wedding of the century. Every detail screamed wealth. But what moved people most was that even in a wealthy family, true love could exist. During those years, Fang Yuan studied abroad. His fiancée, who wasn't even living in the same country, flew to Europe twice every month without fail. No matter the weather, she stacked up a thick pile of boarding passes, each one a witness to their love. I silently put down my phone. Fang Yuan was married. Gu Baiken was married to the same woman he married in my previous life, and I was the only one left behind, lost and overwhelmed. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, I ran into Fang Yuan by chance. He wore a low-key Dior suit, holding his wife's hand as they glowed among the crowd. I hobbled on a crutch, forcing myself to catch up, and shouted his name from behind. He turned around and I barely dared to blink, holding my breath, afraid I'd miss even the slightest expression on his face. His gaze lingered on me for a moment. He seemed to think for a bit, confused, then turned his head away. He didn't recognize me. Those 6 years we had loved each other. Those 6 years I was flying high and drowning in luxury, now lived only in my memory.